Right. So this presentation is, hang on, I've got somebody that's just come into the lobby. So this presentation is a bit of a refresher and will focus on the state wild dog policy and mandated baiting requirements for properties in the SA Arid Lands Region. I won't cover the compliance process and what it will involve due to time constraints, although I can announce that a senior biosecurity project officer has been appointed who will be overseeing wild dog compliance measures in the future. Just as a reminder, failure to comply with the legislated baiting requirements discussed in the following slides may result in the initiation of compliance measures for your property. All statements in the following slides that say must are legal requirements and have to be adhered to, and any statements that say should is best practice, but it's not a legal requirement to follow that process. This presentation does not include information about Region 3 shown on the map, mostly because it falls outside of our region, and it also doesn't include the area north of the buffer zone where wild dogs are not a declared pest species. Got a bit of a delay with sharing these screens. Okay, so we'll start with the first region. It's the pastoral unincorporated area inside the dog fence. And the reason we start with this section is because it makes up a large chunk of our properties inside the dog fence. So in this area, all land managers must lay one wild dog bait per kilometre of all tracks across the entire property. For organic properties in this area, the equivalent amount of bait needs to be laid within fenced areas, preventing access by livestock near water points. This level of baiting must be completed in autumn and again in spring each year, even if there's no evidence of wild dog activity on the property. It's a precautionary level of wild dog control. If there is dog activity on the property, then this should be reported to all neighbouring properties, property managers and the landscape board. And a manager then needs to develop a management zone defined as a 10-kilometre buffer around the evidence of wild dog control. Then, at a minimum, they must immediately lay at least one bait every 200 metres of vehicle track within that 10-kilometre management zone. For organic properties, the equivalent amount of baits need to be laid within fenced areas, preventing access by livestock near water points. If dog activity is detected after 1 month of baits being laid, the land manager must repeat the baiting, undertake trapping, or employ the services of a professional trapper to destroy all wild dogs. The increased control measures must continue until no dog activity is present on the property. Next, we'll look at Region 2. Now, this only applies to properties greater than 300 hectares in the following council areas: Flinders Ranges Council, District Council of Orroroo-Carrollton, District Council of Peterborough, Northern Areas Council, Regional Council of Goyder, and District Council of Ceduna. In this area, if there is evidence of wild dog activity on a property, it should be reported to all neighbouring property managers and the landscape board. Once this occurs, the reporting property and any adjoining neighbouring properties must lay 10 wild dog baits per 100 hectares of land, or one bait every 200 metres along stock pads and private tracks. If wild dog activity is detected after 1 month of baits being laid, the land managers must repeat the baiting, undertake trapping, or employ the services of a professional trapper to destroy all wild dogs. The increased control measures must continue until no dog activity is present on the property for at least 1 month. So now we'll move on to Region 4, and that takes in the rest of South Australia inside the dog fence. Now we've got another property just come into the lobby. So as I said, Region 4 takes in the rest of South Australia inside the dog fence. Any property in South Australia not already covered by the region inside the dog fence falls into this category. So for any dog activity in this area, regional landscape boards should be notified of the dog activity, and land managers must comply with the regional landscape board's instructions on how to deal with the issue. And this may include baiting at specified levels, times, or locations, and potentially trapping or shooting if deemed appropriate for that situation. Now, Region 5 is the buffer zone. So the buffer zone is a 35-kilometre area directly on the outside of the dog fence, including the dog fence along the New South Wales border to the north of Mulliangry Station and only on SA land. All land managers in this area of the state must lay 10 wild dog baits within 10 kilometres of each active man-made water point located within the buffer zone. For organic properties, the equivalent amount of bait needs to be laid within fenced areas, preventing access by livestock near the water points. And this level of this level of baiting must be completed in autumn and again in spring each year, even if there is no evidence of wild dog activity on the property. So once again, it's a precautionary level of baiting. Right, so let's move on to questions. So we'll take some questions now. If we should have plenty of time to get through it. We're running ahead of schedule. So if anyone's got any questions, please put your hands up. Anybody? Okay, we've got a question here. Okay, Janine, I've just allowed your microphone, so you can click on the microphone icon at the top of the screen and you'll be able to ask your question.
Okay, Chris, it's probably a dumb question, but what's the status of the dog fence itself in terms of repair?
Yep, okay, so I guess Heather Miller could probably talk about this a lot better than I can, but I can state that the dog fence was in disrepair, but there is a project in place at the moment that is fixing the issues on the fence. I think there was 1,500 kilometres that is being replaced in over a 5-year period, and a lot of the areas on the dog fence that were in poor condition before are actually in really good condition now. So it's certainly keeping out a lot more dogs than it used to.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Heather?
Yeah, Chris, I can say that 800 k's has been rebuilt of the fence, 800 of that 1,600 kilometre, but certainly maybe Pete Litchfield could add more if he'd like.
Hang on, Peter, I'll have to allow your mic if you want to share any more information.
Yeah, you hear me now?
Yeah, mate. Yep.
No, the fence has always been in dog-proof condition. There's just been an old fence that's taken a lot to keep it up to scratch, but except for immediately after major incidents like floods and that, there's been breaches and that sort of thing. But the fence has always been dog-proof, but with this new fence, it's a lot easier to keep it that way.
Anyone else? Any other questions? I expected we'd have a lot more questions when we were talking about the legislation and the different zones. Anybody? No? Okay.